Hello, you're listening to Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, a weekly podcast designed to bring you snippets of encouragement to help you as you go about your day. I'm Jenny Guy, your host. Do you talk to yourself? If so, what do you say in that one-sided conversation? Do you feel better or worse after having had that little chat with yourself? Today's episode covers an incident in David's life when his self-talk meant the difference between success and failure. Let's get started. I confess, I talk to myself. Do you? I find that I'm doing it more and more these days. Sometimes I pay attention to what I'm saying. Other times, most of the time, I'm just muttering away, blowing off steam, voicing frustrations that I don't feel comfortable saying out loud while in the situation. How about you? What do you say when you're talking with yourself? For example, are you saying, with the appropriate eye rolls and head and hand gestures, what you should have said to that no-good so-and-so when you had the chance? Or are you rehearsing a speech you're going to make when you tell your manager why you deserve that raise? I'm guessing that when you stop to really think about it, you probably talk to yourself more than you realize. It's okay. You can admit it. I won't tell anyone. Because I believe that we all do it at some time or another. I'd like to share with you an incident from the life of David, Israel's most famous king. This incident illustrates the power of what we say to ourselves when we're in dire circumstances. First, I'll give you the background of the story. Then I'd like to read it. It's not long, so you can hear it for yourself and picture what happened. Here's the story's background. Several years prior to this incident, David had been anointed the next king of Israel. However, Israel's current king, Saul, who, by the way, was David's father-in-law, was intensely jealous of David. Saul drove David from his home and chased him around the countryside. Saul planned to kill David when he finally captured him. While running from Saul, David sought refuge in many places. During his roamings, men who were themselves outcasts from society joined forces with David and made him their leader. These men had separated themselves from society because they were in debt, or were in trouble of some kind, or were just generally discontented with the way things were. David accepted them all, however, and trained them to become fearless and highly skilled warriors. Over time, the group grew to be about 600 in number. Their bravery and skill were unmatched in battle. Today, a group like that would probably be known as soldiers for hire. At one point, David aligned himself and his men with Achish, the king of the Philistines, and helped him fight his enemies. There was a hitch to this arrangement, though. Philistia and Israel were enemies, and eventually there would come a day when Achish would have to fight Saul, the king of Israel. Well, that day finally arrived. Achish doubted that David and his men would remain true to him. He figured that they would defect to Israel's side in the battle. Therefore, Achish dismissed David and his men and severed their battle relationship. David and his men returned to the city of Ziklag, which was their base of operations. this is where our story begins. We find it in 1 Samuel, 30th chapter, verses 1 through 26. I'm reading from the King James Version of the Bible. And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the 3rd day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away, and went on their way. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's 2 wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. And they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said unto him, To whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me, because 3 days agone I fell sick. We made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by God, that thou wilt neither kill me, nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines, and out of the land of Judah. And David smote them from the twilight even unto the evening of the next day. And there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled. And David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle, and said, This is David's spoil. And David came to the 200 men, which were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide at the brook Besor. And they went forth to meet David, and to meet the people that were with him. And when David came near to the people, he saluted them. Then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial, of those that went with David, and said, Because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. Then said David, Ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord hath given us, who hath preserved us, and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. For who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is that goeth down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. And it was so from that day forward, that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent of the spoil unto the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, Behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. This story has many points that can be emphasized. However, there is only one that I want to deal with today. It's in verse 6. Let me read that verse again for you. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. Did you catch it? David encouraged himself. In other words, when he talked to himself, he said words that reminded him of God's past faithfulness in tight or seemingly impossible situations. He spoke to himself about how God had fought with him in critical battles before and had helped him win. As David talked with himself, he probably said things like, David, you know that one of God's names is Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of armies. Furthermore, God himself taught you how to be a warrior. You also know from the scriptures that God appeared to Joshua as the captain of Joshua's soldiers and helped Israel fight against the Canaanites time and time again. Come on, David, get it together. You know that God's very nature is faithfulness. He's never failed you before, and he will not fail you now. So get up and go fight those Amalekites and get your family back. Go get your herds and livestock back. Go get what is yours and has been taken from you. Go, David, for God is with you. And as the story told us, after David finished encouraging himself, he encouraged his men, the same men who had wanted to kill him just a little while before, to go and take back what had been stolen from them. As the Bible says, David and his men recovered all. Nothing was lost. So, the next time you find yourself in a challenging situation and need to hear some words of encouragement, but there's no one around to say them to you, remember David. Encourage yourself. Remind yourself of how faithful God has been to you in the past. Recall the times when you know that you know there was a divine intervention in your life. Recollect the answers that you've received to your prayers. Speak of all of those things to yourself. Tell yourself, "Self, listen up. I need to remind you of a thing or two about God. If He did it before, He'll do it again." And you too, like David, will be victorious because you've encouraged yourself in the Lord your God. I hope you heard something today that has encouraged you and possibly given you something new to think about that will motivate or inspire you. If you would like a PDF copy of the show notes for this episode of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, visit my website at jguypublisher.com. New episodes are published each week on Wednesday. I hope you'll join me for another installment of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, be encouraged.